It was at this moment she knew that she had f***ed up. I have my hand stuck in the engine.
I'm Jack Bennington, and together we're going to learn something today. It was time to get the engine out of Miss Rosie to sort out the gearbox problems. So Dad went back down to Falmouth to do that and start work on building the radar arch and fixing the woodwork around the cockpit.
Good.
As you can see, the prop wouldn't turn at all. Dad and Mum had put a tarpaulin over her to protect her. The engine was lifted out onto a pallet to bring home, and Dad started work on the radar arch whilst Kelvin worked on the cockpit woodwork.
There's Miss Rosie with the radar arch, and yeah, I can consider extending the legs, but I can't make it any narrower because the legs only just fit outside the cockpit coamings. But if I make the legs longer, will the radar arch look stupidly tall on the back of the boat? And perhaps not, actually. It perhaps will look quite good, because when I look at some of the other boats around, the radar arch is really high. Like, for example, on that boat there, the radar arch is 3 or 4, probably 3 feet higher than the top of the canopy, the spray hood. So on Miss Rosie, it's the same height as the spray hood. So yes, I might extend the legs, but I'm going to have a look at that tomorrow. Today's job is clean the bilge. So bilge progress. Prop shaft progress. It's a very, very dirty job, and it's very hard to film this and do it at the same time, so it might be a bit short on footage, this. There you go. Oh, have a look at this. Right.
Talking to me?
No, I'm talking to myself. Talking to our lovely viewers. Look at that. And so there's the water tank. Oh my God. I just don't know what to do. Where's that going? Okay, so that must be the freshwater pipe out from the water tank. That is the freshwater pipe into the water tank. That is the anti-siphon from the water tank. Is that an electric bilge pump? That's the manual bilge pump.
Hey.
That's the manual. You are? Oh, you got the piece out, yeah. Kelvin's repairing the cockpit coamings. Temporary fix will be replacing the cockpit coamings next year. But for now, they just need to be made strong enough to sail us back to North Wales.
Bit of driftwood.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
We've got plenty of driftwood here.
Plenty of driftwood. So the bilge under the engine is swept, sort of clean, and I'm going to clean it. And then, God knows how am I going to get down there. I can't get the water tank out. And I can't get the water tank out because it's held down by these joists, and these joists hold the floor up, and they go underneath the seats, so that's not feasible. The best I can do is clean around it. Right, anyway, onwards and upwards. Right, next update. The bilge is looking a lot cleaner. It's not finished. This is not finished. The difficulty I'm finding is just getting in there to clean it, because I'm not a big guy, but I am fat, and I'm old. I'm fat and I'm old, and I'm unfit, and I'm sweating like a pig, and I stink, and just getting into some of the contortionist. You need a yoga person or a gymnast or something to get in there and clean this bloody thing. Still, it's getting there very slowly. Next winter, when the engine comes out again, I will repaint the bilge with flow coat or something. But for now, I just want it cleaned up so it's not just so disgustingly manky. Still got to tackle under the tank. End of day 2. Right, cockpit coamings are kind of repaired. There's a patch there and there's a patch there. And the radar arch is tomorrow's job. We didn't manage to get the whole of the bilge cleaned today, but we got some done. At least under the engine's done. The kicking strap's now done, look. So you can now release the kicker from there, which is nice. There's the kicker. There's Calvin. And the kicker comes through there, and through that, and through that, and through that. And we've now got our roller reefing set up. We've got our jib sheets set up. And it's time to go and get some food and some rest. I'm back tomorrow. Just welded up one extension piece onto this leg. Cut the foot off the radar arch and welded on a piece of extra steel with some 316 rods, and it's all right. It's not brilliant, but it's okay. It's strong enough.
So Dad made the legs on the radar arch a bit longer so the arch would be a bit higher.
Right, so there's the radar arch, which is, I've extended it upwards about 500mm, so looks good. And it means that when you're getting onto the boat, stern to, and you're going through this little gate here, you've got enough headroom to get onto the boat and not smack your head on the solar panel or the arch or anything like that. The engine is out of Miss Rosie, going home for a quick rebuild, not a full rebuild, just a quick rebuild. The solar arch is done. The cockpit coamings have been made good. Going to paint those this afternoon and then pack up and go home. Well, I started this project without really explaining what I was doing, but basically, here's the situation. On the new boat, Miss Rosie, is the Volvo MD2B engine, and when we first got there, the engine started and ran really lovely, but the gearbox was seized. So I've been and fetched the gearbox, managed to get it back home, and I've actually now got the gearbox off. There's a lot of work to do here, so here we go. I'll switch back to where I started this in a little bit, but where we're up to so far is we've got the gearbox off. We've got the inside of the engine actually looks spotlessly clean and beautiful, and I can't see why this is going to give me much of a problem, but I may end up just having to source and purchase a new, well, replacement gearbox in its entirety, but we'll see. In the meantime, I'm going to switch back in time now to earlier on when I actually started this, and yeah, back in time now. Hang on, I might be able to handle a smaller socket. Let me try that. Right, so this is now where we're up to. There is the manifold that needs doing, and then on the back of the engine we have this gearbox, and it is completely seized. This coupling attaches to the prop shaft for the propeller, and then you've got this R&D coupling, which is nylon. This is the gear selector, which does turn. Here is the bell housing. Look at that. I've got a feeling that this gearbox is knackered, and I might be able to get another one, but I've got to get this gearbox off. So I've undone all of these bolts. These two were for the engine mounting, and this is bell housing, unless there's one that I've missed. Ah, there you go. Look, that's why it's not coming off, because I've missed a sodding bolt. You pillock. Right, I'll try that. Some of these bolts were so badly corroded that there was nothing left of the head, and I had to hammer on the wrong size socket to get them off. But there you go. Oh God. It's a shame because the engine runs nicely. Right, so here we are again. This is the reduction gear. We've got a seized bearing at this end, which isn't completely seized. I've freed it off a little bit. I've had it sitting in diesel all night. The bearing that's in here is 160 quid to replace from Volvo, or 10.99 to replace from eBay. Arrived. I think that's a gearbox. I'm hoping it's a gearbox. Right, so the gearbox that was on the boat is not beyond repair, but it's going to be a longer job. So I'll probably repair it and restore it, and either keep it as a spare or flog it. Look at that. When I turn the drive, I'll give this a bit of a clean up, but it all looks good. Thanks very much, mate. That's absolutely brilliant.
With the new gearbox fitted, it was time to test that it was all working properly before going any further. The gearbox goes into reverse and forward gear perfectly. There's a whining noise on the reverse gears, which we found out because it has straight cut gear instead of helical gears in reverse, so that's completely normal. The next job was to clean up the old paintwork so the engine could be repainted.
Chicken cam. Chicken.
All the ancillary parts were removed from the engine and cleaned thoroughly before repainting and refitting. There are some nice brass parts on this engine which look great when cleaned up properly. So the engine went from this to this. Dad ran the engine for a while in the garage to check for leaks. There was a small diesel drip from one of the copper washers and a tiny drip from the water pump. But then, just after the camera was turned off, the oil pump just exploded, sending bits of the front plate across the workshop.
Right, so before this all goes back together, I suppose I better explain the oil pump issue. The oil pump blew whilst running it, so I was running the engine at a different speed to tick over. What happened was the front cover just exploded. I can only assume that there was some crap in the sump which got pulled up through the oil pump and blew the cover off. I have a couple of spare engines, and I was able to take an oil pump off the other engine, which is now here, which is being cleaned. It's been soaking in petrol. That's the oil pump that's going on, and as you can see, we've got 1, 2, 3 bolts that hold it to the engine. So if you ever do come to take this off, here's a tip as well: you don't need to take the flywheel off. All you need to do is slacken these 3 bolts enough to get the thread ends out of the block, and then the whole oil pump comes out from behind the flywheel without having to remove the flywheel.
Now while Andy's working, I get the fun job of cleaning out the sump of the engine. Now, he's told me to inspect the big ends, and he drew me a picture. But I still don't have a clue what he's talking about. I tried to wobble everything inside and nothing moves, so I'm guessing that's positive. There you go, that's my job for the afternoon.
So we've siphoned all the oil, and now Melissa's cleaning out the sump, and then also managed to shear a bolt off the other side plate. So I'm going to remove that and use a stud extractor to pull that out.
nothing.
Yeah, there's no play in that big end. Yeah, that's the big end bearing. You've got it.
Yeah, nothing moves.
Yeah, and the big end bearings don't seem to have disintegrated. And when it was running, they sound nice. They don't sound horrible. And there's the sheared stud. That one. Bollocks.
We checked inside the engine to make sure it was all clean and had no more little bits of metal. Should have probably done that earlier, Dad.
As you've seen, we've got a bolt sheared off. We've got the side plates taken off. Because we've cleaned the sump out and got all the swarf and sludge and old oil out, we don't want bits of anything going in there. So we've covered up the aperture with tape, cut a little access panel, and this is the sheared bolt. So what I'm doing now is I'm filing that bolt flat, just with a metal file, and I don't want the bits going into the sump. First I'm going to use this, which is actually, it's a scribe, but it's got a very hardened tip. So I'm going to put a tiny little mark in the centre with that. And then I'm going to follow that up with another centre punch that I've just put on the grinder, on the bench grinder, and put a new end on. So yeah. There's the mark from the first punch. Really tiny, and it looks pretty central to me. And there's the mark, slightly bigger, from the second punch. So the next job is to drill as straight down the centre of that as I possibly can with a drill bit. The tools I'm using for this are an easy out screw extractor. So I'm going to use the 3 to 6 mil easy out, the second one. And for that reason I'm going to drill a pilot hole slightly smaller. Bigger ones, definitely. The general rule with these is always
as big as you can.
Finally, the engine was all back together and ready to test run again. And she really has got some lovely rhythm.
So continuing work on the radar arch, I'm making an adjustment for the legs. I've already cut the foot off and welded on some steel here, some steel tube, and I've got some tube that goes very tightly over the leg, so I can put a bead of weld round here, and then I've got some adjustment in the leg so I can make sure that the angle of the front leg and the angle of the back leg are good when they come up to the deck of the boat. So I've got to cut these tubes in half. They're 500 mil long, 50 centimeters. The way that I go about that is I mark the center point and I slide a paper tube over the steel. I've already done it and taken it off, but by keeping the paper parallel and sliding it round, I can then scribe round the entire thing, and it means I've got a perfectly straight line all the way around. Then when I come to actually cut it, I've already scribed that line. I use these very, very thin 1mm discs, which you don't need to put any pressure on. They cut quite nicely. In fact, if you put pressure on, all you do is wear the disc out quicker. So I'll cut that tube in half and you'll see what I mean.
All that was left to do was finishing making the leads for the
using a
radar
proper
arch.
pipe cutting tool, I'm sure there's a better way of doing that. But that gets a pretty good cut through parallel. Now it means that on my bottom leg here, I can slide that over, weld that in place all the way around here, and it means that my bottom leg and my top leg have got quite a bit of adjustment there. Do bear in mind, said it again, not a welder, not a fabricator, just a bloke with a boat that sometimes needs to do my own work rather than pay somebody else to do it where possible.
In the next episode, Dad sorts out all the equipment which will be attached to the radar arch and heads back down to Falmouth again to fit the engine. If you enjoyed this episode, please smash the like button and hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out any future episodes.